And now.
Yeah, I'm good.
Lorenzo, can you able to mute, I think, a couple of people, Brenda, maybe?
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us for our first Census Black Roundtable convening of 2025. We are really happy to be able to connect with you all today. To get us started, I am going to turn the floor over to our president and CEO of the National Urban League, Mark H. Morial. We will be talking about the American Community Survey and why it matters for the Black community. And I just ask everyone that is coming online, if you could mute your phones so that we can hear our speakers. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to the conversation. Mark, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Jerica, and good afternoon to all, and I appreciate everyone joining. We are here for our first Black Census Roundtable meeting of the year, and we're 6 days away from the first 100 days of the new administration. This has been 100 days of chaos and cruelty wielded on the Black community. For me to say it any other way would be less than accurate and truthful. What have we seen? The revocation of visas, the elimination of temporary protected status for many in our community, including our Haitian brothers and sisters, the elimination of the Census Advisory Committee, the dismantling of the Department of Education, the EEOC, the Offices of Civil Rights, the Minority Business Development Agency, and I could go in, the attack on science and evidence-based policymaking, economic chaos through off and on tariffs. We must continue to defend democracy, defend diversity, and defeat poverty. These are challenging and tough times, but we are resilient and we are tough. The National Urban League, with the help of the Legal Defense Fund, filed suit against 3 of the president's executive orders which seek to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really are an attack on civil rights. We know what we are up against. On the good news side, on the positive side of the resistance, I'll be participating next Monday with Reverend William Barber and others. Reverend Young wants you to be read into this on a Moral Mondays activation, which is really against the draconian budget passed by the House and the Senate GOP, which would emasculate Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, investments in both the safety net and in the empowerment of people, all in order to finance a tax cut for billionaires. There are only 900 billionaires in America. But what this tax cut would do would give billionaires a whole cake of a tax cut and give many other Americans not even crumbs of a tax cut, while laying off federal employees, wiping out important agencies, and attacking civil rights. I'll be participating on Monday. Next week is Freedom to Learn Week. It'll culminate on May 3rd with an activation that Melanie and I are involved in, along with Kimberly Crenshaw and Siobhan and many, many others, which will be a Hands Around the Smithsonian activation as a part of Freedom to Learn, to push back on censorships and effort to erase African American history. And then we are thirdly involved in an activation called State of the People, whose first event will take place in Atlanta on Saturday, where our colleague and ally and good friend, our affiliate leader, Nancy Flake Johnson, will be a featured speaker on workforce and jobs on Saturday. Then in May, the National Urban League's Legislative Policy Conference, which is a part of our Empowerment Summit, will take place as we bring hundreds of urban leaguers and friends and allies to Capitol Hill to continue to bring thought leadership and activation to the fore. We'll be busy over the next several weeks, becoming a part of constructive resistance. It's constructive. We would prefer not to be in a place where we have to be oppositional to the policies of any administration. We prefer to be able to support, but we can only support what supports us. We can only support policies, not policies that target us, but diminution and erasure. We have to stand up when things challenge our community and our mission. On the table today will be some very troubling plans to undermine the American Community Survey. Part of the erasure policies is to erase evidence of disparities in racism and their after effects in America. You don't capture data, you don't capture numbers, you don't do it by race. It all becomes amorphous. Data, accurate data capture is essential to civil rights and the work of racial justice. So again, I want to thank Jerica and Ioma and Jerry, and also Melanie Campbell and her great team, the EJSI team, but all of the members of the Census Roundtable. We've got to stay together and continue to do this work, even though Census 2030 is 5 years off. The planning and the work, and let's say our effort to make sure that there's no damage done, must continue and must go on. So with that, I'm proud to introduce and welcome my sister, friend in this work and in this struggle, and the co-convener of this roundtable, the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and the founder and convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, Melanie Campbell. Thank you, Melanie. Take it away.
Thank you, Mark. And we are truly living in what I believe in Mark, you're a historian, and many on this call, is a time that would be considered that we're going to be having to go through a third Reconstruction. And if you know anything about the first and the second Reconstruction, it is something that can take you decades to come out from under, to rebuild. And we're in that moment. And so the timing around, continue to work around having something as simple and yet also complicated, as Jerry knows, as the counting of our people, is definitely on the list of things that are developed to erase us as a people. So it's 5 years from now, but it's really now, because the money, lack thereof, the idea of not being able to capture who we are and is a real thing as we go through this time. So it's always good to be here with my brother and my friend Mark Moriel and his team. You know, we the Urban League family. I'm a Urban League family member, and good to have all of my team on. And I started it to have more of my team join this call. But I do want to pause because one of your babies, Mark, is now Dr. Ebony Baylor, who will be graduating from Southern University in a couple of weeks, and wanted to lift her up. She'll be speaking later on to share some of the data and findings we have with our census research we've been doing around Black men and families. So let's do a hoorah to Ebony in this moment. As Mark, as you shared, and as I conveyed, we'll have to continue to fight, and this is part of the fight. We know that Black women, we showed up along with the majority of Black men on November 5th. We tried to tell folks, but they didn't listen. We fought to save this country for a future that seeks to move our country backwards, where patriarchy, racism, and white nationalism reign, is attempting to reign once again. We continue to see the blueprint of Project 2025 being implemented in this current administration, I say regime, changing the fabric of our country. For example, we saw the elimination of the Census Advisory Committees, and the National Coalition and National Urban League released a joint statement calling upon the Department of Commerce to restore balanced, nonpartisan sensory advisory committees to uphold the principles of transparency and public trust. We also urge the public, us and you, to remain aware of census operations and plans. We know the ACS is under attack, with many of the conservative sides seeking to eliminate the questions in the ACS and also making it voluntary. Any changes to the ACS could have devastating consequences for the Black community. We will hear more about the importance of ACS from our speakers. You will also hear a focus group report about Black men and families, US Census participation, from Dr. Ebony Baylor from the National Coalition shortly. I look forward to working with you, all of you, on today's calls and others that will follow, to continue developing strategies to fight for this democracy that we help to build, to represent the multiracial, multi-ethnic nation by working together to ensure the 2030 decennial census count is fair and is not undermined by this current administration and Congress to produce an undercount of the Black population, immigrants, and other communities of color. As we did during the first Trump administration, we will continue to mobilize and work as a Black community and coalition to have an accurate census count through our various efforts from the Census Black Roundtable and the National Coalition's Unity Diaspora Coalition and other opportunities to collaborate and partner over the coming years. Mark, you mentioned what we're doing with Freedom to Learn. I think this is part of the resistance. This is part of the fight back to make sure that we are not disappeared, if you will. And I want to do a plug as well about what we have coming down the pike on June 3rd through the 5th. We will be having our second Southern Regional organizing leadership convening at Clark Atlanta University. And we would love to have as many of you all who can join us for that. We will have this on the agenda because it's about long-term power building around for the Black community, economically, issues around justice and fairness, and having a real conversation about the fact that we are in a moment where we will need and have to be a part of a third Reconstruction. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to, when I left my notes, to Jerica, and to welcome Reverend Young, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Melanie, and thank you for all that you are doing for our community in challenging times. I will now turn the floor over to Reverend Patrick H. Young, pastor of the First Baptist Church in East Elmhurst, Queens. Reverend Young?
Yes, let us pray. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far along the way. In the midst of our dark moments, in the midst of despair, we know that you are the God of hope and the God of light. Empower us as leaders in the civic world and leaders in our community. Ignite in us a new, renewed spirit to fight for justice and righteousness. We thank you that you're the God of oppressed. And because you're a God of oppressed, we know that you will help us to overcome oppressive tactics that we're facing even right now. Thank you for this Census Roundtable, and thank you for the leadership. And we thank you that victory is going to be ours. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Young. Thank you for sharing that word. Right now, I just really want to highlight the fact that I know we are going to be talking about two reports. And we're going to be talking about the ACS, but I do want to lift up that the National Urban League did finalize and distribute its civic engagement report for 2024. I will drop that in the chat. Many of you may have already received it, but do want to circulate that as well, because when we are talking about census, that is part of this culture of civic engagement that we continue to create in our movement. And I also want to lift up and thank our Vice President for Equitable Justice, Ray Shackelford. I know you all saw him at the end of 2024. He joined our team midway through the year, but he is going to be very engaged in leading the continued socialization of the ACS, but also really lifting up opportunities throughout 2025 for our community to stay engaged in civic engagement work, making sure that we're still continuing to register voters, making sure people have the information that they need. Public education on all these issues are critically important. And so I do want to give you a little background about Ray. I know many of you know him because he has been a fixture in our movement. But he has been engaged, as I said, in our Reclaim Your Vote nonpartisan GOTV campaign. His portfolio includes gun violence prevention, hate-fueled violence, environmental justice, youth civic education, which is critically important, and so many other issues. Ray is a native Houstonian. He's passionate about creating equity for the Black community and ensuring that future generations are better positioned to be successful. Professionally, Ray has worked in the education, nonprofit, and private sectors for corporations as well, like Coca-Cola, Granger, and Southwest Airlines. Ray was first introduced to the Urban League by his mother as a teenager. She started him off young, y'all, and has spent more than 20 years involved within our movement, within this organization. But quite frankly, Ray has been partnering and working with all of our civil rights organizations, all of Melanie's included, for some time. He really is just a dedicated servant leader. Ray also holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration and Finance from Morehouse College, a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Houston, and a Master's of Policy Management from Georgetown University. Ray is a proud father of his 15-year-old daughter, Jordan. So Ray, thank you again for all the work that you have been doing to keep our community connected, educated on these issues, and really just excited to be kicking off this first Census Black Roundtable meeting. And I know that you will be keeping this community engaged on this work and will be lifting up other opportunities for us to educate folks on the ground in our communities across the country. Welcome and thank you, Ray.
Absolutely. Happy to be here and looking forward to making sure we're engaged and get as many of us counted in 2030 as possible.
Yes, y'all, we got to make sure Black counts. Thanks, Ray. And now I am going to turn the floor over to our special advisor for census at the National Urban League, Ioma Iruka. Ioma is going to share updates and then also introduce our speakers for today. Ioma.
Thank you, Jerica. And to move us along a little bit and to make sure we have plenty of time for our speakers, I'll hold any updates for email. So please look out for updates on email as well. But I want to go ahead and bring our panel together. It is going to be a really, really powerful conversation today with our three speakers, focus on sort of the ACS toolkit led by the National Urban League, and of course, the report from the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation as well. So I want to just introduce the speakers briefly so we can go ahead and get started because we need all the time possible to hear from all three of them. So first would be Alicia Rashid, who is a data and policy consultant with a focus on building a more equitable society through a social and racial lens. She is also the co-author for the National Conference on Citizenship Pandemic and Pathways to Prosperity reports, as well as several reports using census data to inform recommendations for young children, Black and Asian American populations. She received her MPP from the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago and her BA from Adelphi University, excuse me. And also joining her to talk about the ACS toolkit will be Jerry Green, who is a National Urban League Senior Census Advisor and also a former member of the now eliminated 2030 Census Advisory Committee. As we know, Jerry has an accomplished career as a civic engagement professional, has led numerous outreach efforts with national organizations, local and federal governments, and she formerly served as Senior Advisor for Civic Engagement, Office of the Director for the US Census Bureau. And finally, last but not least, is Dr. Ebony Baylor, the current Vice President of Policy and Strategic Alliances at the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and leads the public policy development and fosters key relationships across government and private sectors. And just a quick lay of the land, we're going to have Alicia and Jerry talk about the National Urban League toolkit, focus on the ACS, and then after that, following will be Ebony to talk about the census report on Black male engagement on the census. Okay. So with that, do I share my screen? Are you ready for me to share the screen? Okay.
Awesome. And while Ioma gets set up, thank you so much for the introduction. And hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today and take a few minutes just to share highlights from the toolkit that Jerry, Ioma, and I created to support Black folks in using the American Community Survey. So with that, we will jump right in. We can move right on to the next slide. So we'll start with some quick facts and context setting. Just to refresh folks' memory, just first and foremost, what is the American Community Survey? So the American Community Survey, commonly referred to as the ACS, is a vital tool that collects detailed demographic, social, economic, and housing data that's conducted monthly throughout the year. So it's essentially a long-form version of the census, which we know only comes every 10 years. So its goal is to provide timely annual data that's reliable, continuous, and nationwide, and that goes all the way down to the local level. Data is used to drive government funding decisions from the local to federal levels and to inform policy, nonprofit, and equity-focused programming. We can jump to the next slide. So the ACS helps us to provide information about the diversity of the Black population in the US, including their racial and ethnic identities, language use, educational attainment, and more. So just to help additionally set the context for what we'll talk about today, here are some quick facts about the Black community. So starting with racial and ethnic identities, you'll see in 2019, about 87% of the Black or African American population identified as Black alone and non-Hispanic, with the remaining 13% identifying as mixed with another race or ethnicity. The Black population in America has increased by nearly a third in the last 2 decades, which is largely in part to an influx of Black, African, and Caribbean immigrants. With that said, nearly half of America's Black population are under 30 years old, and the majority speak only English. Just 9% speak another language at home. Though the majority of the Black population lives in the South, we are seeing states with historically small numbers of Black residents have significant growth within that population. Namely, we saw that in Utah, Hawaii, and Nevada, areas where that number is usually very, very small. We've seen significant strides in education within our community as well. So the percentage of Black adults aged 25 and older that have earned at least a bachelor's degree has nearly doubled since 2000. We have about a quarter of folks that hold that a bachelor's degree or higher. And then lastly, the median income of Black households is $50,000, with roughly 1/3 of that population earning more than $75,000. And then even within that, majority of folks who do earn more than $75,000 are actually earning $100,000 or more. We can jump to the next slide. Thank you. So why is the ACS important for Black communities? Again, the ACS is a critical data source between decennial censuses because of the historical and continuous undercount of the Black community each decade. Black Americans have been undercounted in every census since 1790, when, as we know, Black people were counted as 3/5 of the person. The ACS allows us this opportunity to provide more frequent, accurate, and detailed information on communities during those 9 years between decennial censuses to support federal funding allocations, community resilience needs, voting rights, and fair redistricting. With this toolkit, we aim to educate communities and provide direction in how to utilize ACS data to benefit our communities. The reality is that most people don't know what the ACS does or how it works or how its data can be used. So the toolkit helps to provide details around why and how it would be beneficial to increase response rates, to improve data quality for African Americans and the diaspora, and then also provide some examples around what kinds of data are available for communities to use to inform that policy and govern decision making. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Jerry now to walk us through some additional highlights from the report.
Unmute. I think I'm on now. Thank you so much, Alicia, especially for the huge role you played in helping us develop the ACS toolkit for our community. It's really great to join you and the Census Black Roundtable this afternoon to share with you a few, I think, interesting toolkit highlights. As an introduction, our team started work on this report in late summer 2024. We understood then that Black participation in the American Community Survey was diminishing at an alarming rate. So we wanted to make sure this report differed a lot from the standard reports we've been seeing at the Census Bureau, which typically provide minimal attention to the unique data needs of the Black population. We aim to develop an authentic Black ACS toolkit that resonates with our diverse population, both as Black data users and as an historically undercounted population. Given current political events, we already had a significant amount of distrust as it relates to government institutions. And now, as Mark indicated, we have even more so concerns and reasons to think twice about things. So our report really wanted to kind of bridge that gap a bit because this data truly benefits our communities. What about the report highlights? Let's look at gentrification and Black displacement. We wanted to kind of tackle that a little bit. And we know that over the last 2 to 3 decades, demographic shifts in our community have often resulted in wide-scale Black displacement due to gentrification, natural disasters, hurricanes, the pandemic, floods, and wildfires, to name a few. These shifts impact housing cost, redistricting, our political power, urban investment, and as well as federal funding allocations. The American Community Survey Toolkit discusses how ACS data helps communities understand these changing landscapes and but where decisions need to be made to address often conflicting needs of new incoming populations and long-term residents. I live in Washington, D.C., and we're one of the most gentrified neighborhoods in the country. And we grapple often with, do we build dog parks or playgrounds? And so ACS data helps local decision makers, look at these needs. Of course, politics always enters the picture, but we need data before we make these decisions. Next, let's look at voting rights and redistricting. We really did believe that it was necessary to discuss the nexus drawing a straight line between the ACS, voting rights, and redistricting. As Alicia just mentioned, many politicians and advocates are not even aware that American Community Survey data has an essential role in these two foundational elements. As most of you know, some of you know here around the table, ACS data provides, I know Ebony knows this, provides baseline demographic data for use in the Citizen Voting Age Population File, CVAP. Similarly, ACS data on languages spoken at home is used to identify language minority groups in compliance with Section 2 voting rights provisions. The ACS toolkit discusses the prominent role ACS plays in what is left, as Mark said, of our democratic processes. If we look at Black immigrants, we should know that ACS is the workhorse on ancestry data. The ACS Toolkit for Black communities highlights the rich data ACS provides on ancestry and place of birth, foreign-born populations. And as we know, as Black immigrants are at least 10% of the US Black population, we need data that reflects our ethnic diversity. Quality ACS data on Black foreign-born populations not only plays a role in political representation and targeting federal funds, but it enables our communities to cross-pollinate and identify mutual areas for coalition building, for fighting, and for our support on issues like immigration and economic investment, especially now in our heightened need and understanding of the importance of buying Black. Finally, if we look at community resilience is defined as the capacity of a community or groups to prepare for, adapt to, or recover from natural disasters, such as Gulf Coast hurricanes, wildfires, global warming, and urban heat islands. Additionally, political events or decisions, such as mass deportations.
Huh?
Certainly,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Certainly require community resilience. Some groups or communities have less capacity and fewer resources to overcome certain hardships. Think Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi, water crises, Hurricane Katrina, and the recent wildfires in Southern California's historic Black Altadena neighborhood. Other communities, however, and sometimes including prosperous Black areas, have substantial resources to overcome challenges, higher educational levels, perhaps, internet access, health options, home ownership, English language fluency, access to food and clean water, and believe it or not, even trusted relationships with governmental entities like law enforcement. So given all this, the American Community Survey has developed a tool called Community Resilience Estimates that helps census stakeholders and public health officials and government leaders develop plans to reduce a disaster's potential effects so that communities can recover quicker. The ACS Toolkit takes a close look at the wildfires in Altadena, California, and at a Haitian neighborhood in Central Florida that's looking at how to improve its resilience using ACS and census data. So my time is up right now, Alicia. I'm going to cut it here, and we'll return briefly to discuss specific ACS challenges and a call to action that we might want to consider as we continue to fight for our rights, and for our dignity as it relates to data. So thank you, Alicia.
Yep, and I'll quickly just mention this last piece that we include in the report. I'm not going to go through each community here, but we decided to highlight several communities that have unique makeups of Black populations within the state. So whether it be large amounts of an overall Black population or maybe a majority Black ethnic group within a small community. So for example, we highlight East Point, Georgia, that has a very large population of African American folks. We highlight New York City, which houses the largest count of the Black population, whereas Prairie View, Texas has the highest concentration of African Americans, either alone or in combination with another race. And then places like Immokalee, Florida, and Wilmar, Minnesota, which have very large concentrations of Black immigrant populations. So we chose to highlight specific data that, as you may have guessed, are highlighted and found through the ACS. So we highlight population numbers, employment and income, health, housing, language, education, voting age, all different data points that could really help a community when they're looking to make different policy decisions or think about where to send funding for their different populations. So we wanted to do this just to give folks, again, an idea of how they can really utilize ACS data to empower their communities. And again, that you can look through these. We have some clips here on the slides, but this is all in the report as well. And I'll toss it back over to Jerry to again walk us through those challenges and the call to action.
Very well. Thank you so much. So, certainly looks like the ACS is a vital data point for all of our communities, especially from a federal funding standpoint. And yet the ACS is facing troubling hardships that threaten its sustainability, as well as the quality of its data. So steadily declining response rates have long been a problem across the board for all government surveys, not just the ACS. However, because of the ACS's small sample size, low response rates skew the data. Respondents who are more likely to fill out the form and to be overcounted likely have different characteristics than non-respondents. Folks who are, have a few problems with filling out government forms. And so their attributes, their characteristics, such as race and ethnicity and language and income, education, and other factors, will tilt data to favor those characteristics, leaving a lot of people unserved, underserved, and without some political representation. So in addition to low response rates, these low response rates increase the cost of data capture. That means sending census workers out in our communities to knock on the door to get a response. So, it's a compounding problem when we don't respond to the American Community Survey. And then there are the same old tired, re-emerging challenges posed by some politicians who want to either kill the entire survey or make it voluntary. For some reason, having accurate quality data on the nation's people, places, and economy scares the life out of conservative politicians who continue to try to dismantle the American Community Survey. Of course, we all know it's not just about that. It's a shameless, continuous assault on our civil rights, our political power, and the well-being, especially for Black people. However, conservative-friendly business groups like the US Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Business Economists have strongly supported the ACS in the past, when it was put on the chopping block by Republican members of Congress. Even the besieged, busted, boycotted retail giant Target publicly supported the ACS in the past. And then there's DOGE, the non-department of governmental efficiency or something like that. The Census Bureau really is in a critical state right now. They're experiencing huge departures due to Elon Musk's fork. They're having significant layoffs, early retirements, probationary employees have been let go, and there's a census brain drain that NPR's Hansi Lo Wang wrote about a couple of weeks ago. So the question is, are there enough ACS boots on the ground? I'm sorry, y'all. I love that little line dance. But anyway, are there enough ACS employees out there to even field this survey? To make things worse, the federal agency has a hiring freeze, agency-wide. So it's very difficult for regional census staff to replace large swaths of workers across the 6 regions to even conduct this survey. We are most concerned about Census ACS field representation in the southern states, where 60% or more of our Black population resides. Will there be enough employees to ensure an accurate count of Black populations residing in the South amid such large staff losses? Pastor Young, the Bible assures us that no weapons formed against us shall prosper. So we're good. Roundtable members, we're good in that direction. However, there are many daggers aimed directly at the ACS. So we wonder sometimes, stakeholders out here, will ACS die a natural death by the way of 1,000 budget cuts? Certainly is a simple way to gut the program. Finally, as if census data privacy concerns could get any worse, DOGE efforts to obtain personal taxpayer data at the IRS and to access heavily guarded federal databases that store the public's personal information gives ACS respondents no comfort that their data will be protected by Title 13 census protections. These are clear and present dangers that not only affect the American Community Survey, but will have significant repercussions as we go further into planning the 2030 census. So here's a call of action. There is an urgent need for facets, all of our community, including foreign-born, to respond to the ACS when it arrives in our mailboxes. That's simple. Or if a census enumerator knocks on your door, just fill out the form, sirs and ma'ams. We can do this. We can also educate our neighbors and community about the benefits of ACS participation. Fill the form out with your family members so they will know it's a good thing. Letters to the editor work as well, as do neighborhood listservs. Black stakeholders, legislators, and administrators need to pay attention to all the planned dirty deeds, and there are many that are forthcoming and challenge these, the American Community Survey and the census overall. So send a letter to your congressperson or senator telling them how vital the ACS is and why they need to support full ACS funding. You know, we must continue to fight and fight hard. It's not going to get any, it's only been 100 days in. So, we are going to have to continue to fight as we have, you know, since our existence here. There's so much work to do, a lot to say, but Ioma and Jerica, we should see if there are any questions and move forward if we can with the agenda.
We'll let Ebony go ahead and go. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Alicia.
Okay.
We'll let Ebony go and then see if we have questions. If not, we may have to take it virtually, electronically. Thank you so much. Ebony, I'll stop sharing.
Again, good afternoon. Thank you all. Really excited to be here to present our report that we did on really a focus group focusing on Black men and individuals with children underneath the age of 5. As we begin to think about the census and participation, we know in our communities that there is a total undercount of the Black community, particularly for Black men and for children underneath the age of 5. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to present my screen. And the reason why this is so important, as President Campbell said in her presentation, the organizing and structuring for the census, 2030 decennial census, starts now. In 2026, they are going to be doing field tests across the country. So as we begin to think about the undercount in the Black community, particularly around Black men and children underneath the age of 5, we wanted to hear directly from the community. We wanted to hear from them about why they were not participating in the census. And again, this went out into the field in fall of 2024. This report was commissioned again by the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation at the Thomas W. Doris Institute at Clark Atlanta University. We have our Southern Regional Office. It was important for us to have a presence on HBCU's campus. And even as we conducted this research, it was important that we worked with other colleagues to ensure that we have representation from our campus. So it was actually conducted by the W.B. Du Bois Southern Center for Studies in Public Policy at Clark Atlanta University. And so we wanted to make sure that this was academically rigorous. It went through the IRB process to ensure that as we are even presenting this to the community, that this is something that can be utilized by Black researchers in the future. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to look at barriers, implications, and recommendations to help increase participation in the Black community. And so, as we know, the US Census is critical for federal funding, political representation, and resource distribution. So we want all Black people to be counted so we can make sure we have political maps that's representative of our communities and ensure that we get all the funding that's due to our areas. But however, Black men and families face systemic barriers, misinformation, and mistrust leading to underrepresentation. This report explores these concerns and proposes solutions to increase participation. So the way that we did this, we were very intentional about ensuring that the individuals who participated in the focus group were from the South. We did one of our focus group in person in the state of Arkansas. The other 3 were done virtually to ensure that we have representation from other parts of the South. And also we ran into some barriers with weather in the 2024 election, but we were excited to be able to have these conversations. And so what we found in doing this, that awareness varies, and that many people got their awareness from the census through family, school, and the media. Whether the information was truthful or not, they learned about the US Census from their community, family, school, and the media. Some participated due to workplace initiatives or incentives, while others had never completed it. A lot of things were done around misinformation and the lack of visibility. So people were very unsure about the purpose of it. They were unsure about the validity of it, and they really there was a mistrust in the government. And so, again, as we go to and we think through perceptions and awareness, awareness varies significantly among Black men. Some of those who participated, again, they had never heard of it. Some of them heard from their family and friends. Some of them heard of it in community initiatives and groups. And again, as we emphasize, they learned from their family, the school, or the media. But a lot of the people who participated in the focus group, they don't recall being encouraged to actually participate and be told why they needed to participate. And then some participated when they were incentivized, revealing that there were gaps in outreach. So they had never heard from Gada community or anything officially saying, this is why you need to complete the census, or even that the census is coming. And as we move to what were some of the barriers and concerns, and I know Jerry already touched on some of this, there was a deep-seated mistrust of government institution. A lot of people feeling that this information could be utilized against them. Some people thinking that other government agencies would get access to this and move to prosecute them or criminalize their participation. Fear of data misuse, including tracking and surveillance. So they were under the impression that if they completed the census, now they're being tracked by the government. And logistically, some of the challenges that were brought up was unstable housing. So individuals not fully understanding that on April 1st, anyone who lives in that household should be counted, whether they're on the lease or not, and lack of access to forms. So we know in the 2020 census, that was one of the first census that was done primarily online. So in addition to thinking about access to paper forms, you had to deal with the digital divide and the lack of digital inequity that exists within those communities. And again, skepticism that participation leads to tangible benefits. So they didn't understand that when you are counted and your community is accurately reflected, that it impacts the number of schools, the number of stores, the number of businesses that come into your community. And so next we moved into the trust, which was a really big component and a really big section of the discussion within the focus group. Many feel that their communities remain underrepresented despite participating. So most of the individuals who participated in the focus group had not completed the census, but there were some who did participate, and they felt like despite them participating, that their community still wasn't getting resources and that they were under-resourced and underrepresented. And they thought that census data is perceived as reinforcing systemic inequities. So as individuals are thinking about their community and what's happening in their community, they felt that this form of data was actually reinforcing all the inequities that exist within their communities and not understanding that it can help alleviate some of those inequities. Participants want greater transparency on how the census data is used. We know that us here who are a part of the roundtable, we know how the census data is utilized. We know how the census data is protected or should be protected, and some of the laws that are put into place to ensure that census data is only utilized to count you where you are on April 1st and where you're living for political representation and fund allocation. And the hiring of census workers from Black communities could increase trust. So as Jerry already alluded to, one of the things we are concerned about as we go into the 2026 field test is this hiring freeze and the use of probationary workers and people being laid off, because it's going to directly impact individuals from our community participating in these field tests. And so as we move to our outreach and engagement, what are some things that can be done in order to get more people to participate in the census? First, leverage trusted community leaders and organizations like yourself. People need to hear more from individuals that they trust and individuals that they know on why they must participate in the census. Increase digital outreach through social media and influencers, particularly for the younger community and individuals under the age of 40. The way they consume their information and their news is on social media. So utilizing social media, utilizing influencers, utilizing platforms that's going to ensure that they get the message in a way that they can receive it. Next is develop year-round civic engagement strategies. We know, and we don't talk about the census only in 2029 and 2030, but we need to see a stronger cadence of talking about the census year-round and incorporating it into our GOTV activities as we're talking about voting. Always make sure there's a streamline and a through line to the census. And then strengthen accountability to ensure census-driven funding benefits the Black community. And so we have an opportunity where we can actually start to move through and build like profiles, be able to say, because of the census, this was created in our community, and these are the things that we need to do. And so again, in closing, as we begin to just wrap up, again, barriers to participation was mistrust in government and concerns about data misuse. There were logistical barriers like the lack of outreach, inaccessible forms, and unstable housing. And then again, the perception that the census does not result in tangible community benefits. And some of the, again, implications we already know about this: underrepresentation in legislative bodies and funding allocation, continued disparities in education and healthcare and infrastructure that is much needed in our community. And we need the need for improved transparency and accountability in census efforts, and educating the public about what the Census Bureau is, what they do, and how they utilize the data. And so the recommendations that came from the focus group is enhanced community outreach via faith groups and leaders. So we know the Black church is critical to educating the community, and we want to build up on that, and also other avenues that are cultural hubs for us, like the barbershop and the beauty shop, and some of our community centers that are critical in places of gathering. Improve accessibility through digital platforms and mobile census stations. So how do we continue to talk about this on social media? How do we pull in more influencers? And how do we also, in areas where there might be a digital divide, where individuals might not have access to technology, how can we ensure that they have access to something mobile to complete the census? Combat misinformation with educational campaigns. That is what we do at the Census Black Roundtable and the Unity Diaspora Coalition. But we have to do more educational campaigns and do them early and do them often. Increase Black representation among census workers. So this is another call to action. So as we're talking to our members of Congress, as we're talking about funding, these are things that we need to bring up and say, hey, this hiring freeze is going to impact Black workers going out in the field. And so as we are advocating with our members of Congress, these are things that we need to do. Next, we need to leverage media influences to amplify census importance. I've already talked about that. Strengthen accountability for census data-driven funding. So again, be able to make the connection so people can see and understand that because of census participation and increase, this library was open. This business came to our community because of our population, or even being able to say, because of a decrease in the census population, these things now exist in our community. So being able to make that throughway and that connection is important. And then also, again, develop long-term civic engagement strategies. The census, this conversation isn't something that we don't do once a year. We don't do once every 10 years. This is something that we need to do consistent, early, and often. And so with that, we know in closing what the barriers are and what we need to do in order to move forward. And so if you want to read the entire report and learn more about our methodology, hear some direct quotes from some of the participants, you can scan the QR code. And again, open to questions. Thank you all for this opportunity and look forward to doing this work now and in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ebony. I'm going to pass it over to Jerica. We don't have time for Q&A, but I want to pass it to Jerica and also for Melanie's closing. So thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Yoma, and thank you to all of our speakers. It was a wealth of information, and we really appreciate you all sharing. We will make sure that we share out the reports again. I know we circulated them earlier with the reminders, but we'll make sure that you all have access to them. And the video will also go up on our Make Black Count website at National Urban League. So thank you all for your time. And I know President Morial lifted up the Legislative Policy Conference, an empowerment conference that is coming up. And so we are excited and looking forward to that. And thank you again to our colleagues at the Washington Bureau who have been working tirelessly on that. Melanie, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as you said, a wealth of information in a very, very, very tight time. So just want to say thank you to everyone for joining. We know we have the work is ahead. And let's go out here and beat the odds, right? With all that we have coming against us, but collectively we can push back on those forces that are attempting to erase us. Again, we help build this country. We're not going anywhere. So we will make sure we do all we need to do to make sure we are counted as best we can. And I think good will conquer evil every time. You just have to have the faith. All right. Thank you all. And turn it back over, I think. I think I turned it back over.
Yeah.
And Mark and Urban League and everyone, and Ebony and everyone who and Jerry and everyone who gave some great information. And I think it was Ray as well. And looking forward to continuing in this fight for our people and with our people.
Thanks all. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And we're happy to answer them offline. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, Jerica.